Hey guys, and sorry about that. Just give it another minute, maybe. Make sure everybody's here. Okay. I said there will be a recording of this. There'll be actual two recordings. It'll be the first half and the second half. Okay. I'm gonna go to shared screen actually. Okay. Okay. So anyway, I'm resuming. So, all right. So it was right around that time. I guess Twitter, I think, came in 2006. Facebook really technically came in 2004, but it wasn't really made public until 2007, I think. And then, of course, there was the advent of the iPhone. You know, those of you, what's interesting about that is that the real contraction didn't really come until the iPhone really became popular. And the iPhone didn't really become popular for a few years, that popular. Those of you who have watched the old, I don't know, maybe you've heard like, oh, all these people say all these great things about these TV shows from the 2000s, like The Sopranos, The Wire, Mad Men, and Breaking Bad. You might have actually like checked them out and seen it, like, why is everybody using a flip phone? I think they used it largely because it actually was like a good tool for drama. I don't want to give anything away, but like one thing that people would do, like in some of these shows, is they would actually like break the phone in half so that that would eliminate any kind of trace. And that's what they would do with the flip phone. Okay, but the iPhone initially didn't really kind of take hold because it had a mutually exclusive contract Apple had with AT&T, which was a crappy wireless service. And a lot of people, I remember people were telling me they were throwing their phones against the wall. They were just so annoyed about how they work. That's why Blackberries were actually popular at the time. And in 2010, actually, I got a Blackberry when I got my job at Patch, and not an iPhone, largely realizing that AT&T sucks. And at least it did at the time. And Verizon was what people really wanted. My kids made fun of me for getting a BlackBerry. Obama had a BlackBerry that was like kind of famous because it had to be encrypted. So anyway, then 2011, I think it was Verizon. Actually, they opened it up to Verizon and everybody else, and then everybody got an iPhone. And then that's really kind of when newspapers actually like had to really kind of adjust and really kind of acclimate themselves. And then we started to see things like, I don't want to be like sound depressing or anything like that, but I mean, there was a contraction that went on. Yes, there was, and it's awful. And I mean, I saw it in my own company, that sort of thing. But at the same time, there were certain organizations that started out that became like internet only. Like there's Politico magazine, which is a news organization that just covers Washington stuff. Oop, I'm getting the pinwheel of death. Probably right around the time this computer was manufactured, and basically their idea was that they were going to basically try to provide like news on a more immediate level. There wasn't any need for the paper edition. Okay. That's also when like patch.com started, which is what I worked at where I worked for 11 years. And yes. Political likes to brag. Okay, guys, there we go. Patch.com. Yeah, okay. And that actually decided to provide more of an immediacy on a local level. Okay. So when these came around, and I'm not trying to brag about my own company and everything, but I found that a lot of like places like the New York Times, but not just the New York Times, but local outlets like the Asbury Park Press and places like that felt like they had to adjust. But let's look especially at the New York Times. Okay. Okay. Yeah, there's the New York Times a long ago. New York Times in the 60s. And here's the New York Times in 1996. We almost kind of laughed when we saw this. This is essentially one of the earliest internet editions of the New York Times. And believe it or not, this is actual size. Computer screens actually were very small at the time. I believe it's actually now 90 inches. Back then it was like 30 or something like that. This is actually the entire web page. Okay. Front web page. And then there were places you could click, that sort of thing, but this was it. Okay. It wasn't very appealing. I remember looking at this and saying, like, why would I even want this? I would just take the newspaper. I mean, whatever, obviously there's some news that's been updated here and that sort of thing, but I could probably get that from TV still. I could probably get that from the radio, back then there was like a big thing. Oh, are you in a chat room? That sort of thing. So when they had this and they were basically not really providing anything different or new, once again, the news organizations had to adjust. It took them about 10 years, 13 years, 14 years, but they did. And now we have this. Okay. And now we have a real multimedia production. And what they did was they went from basically providing nothing new to basically something that nobody else really can provide. And that is all those 5 tools in one. Okay. And actually the broadcast media, which actually, again, had surged ahead of the news media or the print news media for a long time there, actually found itself catching up because they didn't have the writing capability or even the production capability, believe it or not, that the news organizations had, and like the New York Times. Okay. So that's what happened basically. Also the photography capability, they didn't have the writing ability, that sort of thing. And of course they couldn't provide what's always been the continuous most important thing about a news story, and that is depth. Okay. Yes, hold on a sec. And today is 124/22, part 1. I'll be putting this on YouTube later. Okay. Let's get this over here and we'll go bang. Okay. Okay. All right. So just give me 1 second. If you can, please. There's actually one thing I have to address. Actually, one little thing. I'm sorry, if you could. I have to address it. Oh, we can't. That's right. We aren't doing that. Okay, never mind. All right. All right. Anyway, all right. So here we go. And, we basically have like a whole menu of stuff here, and as you can tell, it's fuller, and actually the screen scrolls down. It's not just like one snapshot. The big thing is that what they realized is that they had, in order to, they used to have ads on the internet on news organizations where you had to click on it to make money, and you made no money off of that sort of thing. But then when everything changed and everything shifted, they realized that, companies just couldn't just say, hey, put my ad on it. Yeah, that's fine. They realized that all the readers were shifting to the internet, and they needed to advertise on the internet too. So they shift the whole advertising mechanism, a whole way of doing advertising, from clicking on the ad to looking at the ad. So it became important for both the news organization and the advertiser for people to stay on the site as long as possible. Okay. Just look at the ads as long as possible, look at the stories and then the ads. Okay. So now it's become important to basically have as much on here as possible, to scroll down, to keep you on the site as long as possible. Okay. And of course, and then, once you actually like are able to like click on things and click on different stories, maybe you'll be able to, I must have actually hit an ad blocker for, I guess, for the New York Times, because I'm actually like, not seeing anything here, but anyway, well, there's an advertisement right there. So as you're actually scrolling through the story, actually now you'll see like advertisements appear through the story, that sort of thing. Yeah, there we go. All right, so it's not really important. People also get afraid to click on an ad because they're afraid they're going to end up on some some sort of website that's going to give them a virus. So now actually as you're reading, you get to see stuff like WebEx and Hertz that might be important to you, and then actually that fleeting look, a glance, will actually become important to you. So now it's actually important to provide that depth, because they want you to actually scroll down the story and read the story and see those advertisements. Okay. So basically the whole idea now is that news organizations are supposed to provide something fuller. Okay. But at the same time, more immediate. Okay. And like more to the point. Okay. And also providing depth, and also providing more than just the writing. Okay. I pulled this one up because it was interesting, because it was, I don't know how any of you follow football, but like, it's funny, my interest in football has been kind of like waning over the years, but yesterday was probably the most exciting day in football history. It was incredible. Four of the most incredible football games I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know, didn't watch every one, but I watched the Kansas City Buffalo one. Oh my God. Crazy good game. There was this game right here, the Green Bay Packers. This guy's become more than a sports figure. His name is Aaron Rodgers. He's the quarterback. He could be the MVP this year. But his whole situation is that he became well known because he refused to get the vaccine, and he missed one game because of it. And he became very outspoken about it, but why he feels that he shouldn't be forced to do it. Now he's anti-Biden, the whole thing. Become very outspoken after all these years. This is a guy who was, I guess, kind of universally liked at one time. He was actually in an Office episode. So now he's polarizing, I guess. So anyway, I brought this story out because it's not only a New York Times story, and just to show you different components that it has. It provides more than just what the Dead Tree paper would do to help keep you on the site, but at the same time, it's actually going to be our first graded assignment. And don't forget, today is actually the day I asked for you guys to deliver the profile of yourselves. Okay. Remember, I asked you guys to provide a third person profile, and that whole idea there, again, is to kind of get an idea like where you're at in terms of your writing, that sort of thing. And that's what we're going to concentrate on first, is that. Okay. All right. So anyway, this essentially is a story that essentially follows kind of a profile format. Now, magazines have actually suffered over the years, even though I work for one now, but they've suffered over the years because, there has been less of a demand for basically that kind of writing, that kind of like what they call long form writing. And it's because a lot of times, a lot of people just don't really have the time for it. I like to make the comparison between like digital writing, essentially news writing, today's writing, is the stuff that you want to read quickly. It's the stuff, if you're on the train, which is funny to say now in this pandemic time, if you're on the train, you want to be able to read it quickly on your phone and get it done. Okay. On the way to work. A magazine story, or even like what used to be called essentially a Sunday news story, because the Sunday newspaper used to be the big paper with all the big long stories in it. That's for the people on the weekend who have the time, who may like go in and see the Met or see a baseball game or a football game or something like that. And they have the time to actually read a story on the weekend. Of course, a lot of people work 6-7 days now, but so that demand, the demand for that has actually gone down. Demand for like more immediate journalism has gone up, with the delivery systems of the iPhone and the internet becoming much more, important to people. So, profile stories now are actually like very kind of quick turnarounds. They're not necessarily written in this sort of long form. And with this story about Aaron Rodgers, what's interesting about this is that this is what I'm going to tell you about your profile stories is that, and I haven't, I don't know if any of you have submitted them yet. I haven't had a chance to look at them or anything like that, but it's all about basically writing about what's new. Okay. What's new and unique. Okay. Especially nowadays, again, with the immediacy, the importance on that. So think about Aaron Rodgers. You write a profile story about Aaron Rodgers now. I mean, like, he's accomplished a lot. Okay. This guy won a Super Bowl in 2011. He's basically like put up some of the best stats in the history of quarterbacks, that sort of thing. So he's done things. You could, if you wrote a profile of Aaron Rodgers for a news story, I mean, you could very easily find yourself slipping into the fact that the greatest moment, most unique or greatest moment of his life was that the fact that he won a Super Bowl. He won it once, right? But you wouldn't do that, okay? You're right about what essentially has happened lately, okay? Because that happened 10 years ago. That's old, okay? Maybe if that was like the most biggest thing that happened in his life, and maybe not a lot has happened since then, you would write about that, the Super Bowl victory. But you would write about now, if you wrote about it, you wouldn't write about the Super Bowl victory itself. You would write about the impact it has on him now, okay? And maybe the fact that he hasn't won one since, okay? But there's so much that's happened in Aaron Rodgers' life since then and beyond that Super Bowl victory that you would write about. Basically, well, one of the things you write about the fact that is that he has not won one since, that he's failed to win one. He lost to a team he should have beaten, San Francisco, 13-10, okay? But also the fact that, like, he's a polarizing figure and, he's become controversial and that sort of thing. This story actually takes a little bit of time to get there, but it's actually largely about the fact that Rodgers is just now he's actually coming possibly the end of his career. So the story emphasizes that, okay? That basically he's this very highly accomplished quarterback, but, since that victory in 2011, he's, hasn't won another Super Bowl, while Tom Brady has won 4 since then. So, all right. And you could argue that Rodgers has been the better quarterback since then, but not in the playoffs. So that's what basically the story emphasizes, okay? A certain finality descended upon Lambeau Field, the field goal, the kick ended Packers season, a Super Bowl caliber team, yet created just like last year. So it's all about his, I hate to say, failure to get there, okay? And now he's coming basically at a crossroads where, like, so again, that big accomplishment, the Super Bowl, is not even up here. Okay, it's not, I don't think it's anywhere near, oh, actually it's right here, dating to 2011. It's referred to at one point, not directly, okay? But it's all about what's happened lately, okay? That's what I'm asking you guys to do for these profile assignments, is to basically get that sense of immediacy and basically write about what's unique and important about yourselves, but also write about, like, what's new about that, okay? And that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do actually for your next assignment, okay? A lot of times, when these stories are done now, actually, social media is actually also almost like the sixth tool. The whole idea of being able to actually be able to take that news story and be able to post it onto, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, etc. Okay, so you want to be able to have a lead that actually is simplified in a way that's actually like almost like a Twitter post. Okay, multiple injuries reported in Wildwood deck collapse. Here's a lighter Sierra's 83 recipes for crisp fall days. No Titanic writing, like leading up to like taking 10 million years to get to the point. It gets right to the point. 83 recipes for crisp fall days. That's how people read nowadays. That's what they want their news. And this is the gateway to get them in there. And that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do for this profile story, is to basically write a lead that basically is almost along those lines. What makes this you unique? Okay. This situation, 83 recipes for crisp fall days, I guess could be considered unique. While with deck collapse, that was unique. Okay. But what about you is unique? Okay. What about the person you're going to interview? So basically the difference between this last assignment and this assignment, first of all, is this new assignment is actually graded. Okay. And the next thing is that, it's actually going to be about somebody else. Okay. And actually, let me go to, I should go to the, actually, I'm sorry, I should go to the student view because the way you'll see it. Okay. All right. So I just posted this morning. Okay. All right. So you'll see the profile assignment is still there. Okay. So let's do a week from now. Okay. And actually, we're going to incorporate the second tool, not just the writing tool, which I consider the first tool, but the second tool, which is photography a little bit. But I'm not going to talk about photography now. Okay. Probably a little bit more on Thursday when we meet on Thursday. Okay. But okay, so I'm going to ask you guys, typically our stories are going to be, writing is really still going to be the most important thing about this class. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys to really just make sure that you got, whatever, education you've had before, but also, and top that off with whatever education you get now. Basically, really emphasize clear, concise writing. Okay. So please write a story on someone you know, and I break some rules in this class. Okay. I mean, you're going to hear in other classes, don't ever interview somebody you know. Well, that's not necessarily true. That doesn't always happen. Okay. You don't typically interview a family member either. But I know we're kind of stuck in a situation right now where maybe we're not able to like get out and talk to people as much as we'd like to and that sort of thing. So especially if you're stuck at home or something like that, or you're stuck in your dorm or whatever, so if you want to interview your mother and do a profile on your mother, that's fine or whatever. Okay. Just make sure you just emphasize what's unique and what's new about that person. Okay. Please keep this to 500 words, which again, and please submit a Microsoft Word doc. Okay. Remember, that's basically the rule for the class. I've had people submit PDFs, even though I've said that before, but please do the Microsoft Word doc. Okay. And that's about like a page and a half double spaced, basically, I would say page and a half or 2 pages. Please think of a lead that resembles almost like a breaking, well, it's, a profile story isn't necessarily a breaking news alert. Okay. But, it's, I mean, I'm looking at like some of the alerts I have in my phone right now. One says rich nations are using pay and immigration incentives to attract nurses from poor countries, leaving their health systems weaker. Okay. So that's actually kind of a bit of like an investigative feature story. That's still something that's not necessarily good news, but it's not necessarily breaking news either. So I want you to think of basically like, how would you basically phrase this in an alert? Because the New York Times is actually, again, delivery system is trying to deliver it right up to your nose. How would you deliver, how would you deliver it that would, in a way that would appear on your phone and be something that maybe I'd want to actually like click on. Okay. Now here's actually like the typical news story like format. I actually get a little more specific about this, but what I want you guys to really do, if you might have like remember actually like when you looked at the New York Times story on was an Aaron, well, not the Aaron Rodgers story, but let's look at the, you got a kind of a breaking news story right here. You'll see that actually like the way it's not just actually the way it's written and for a news organization that's important, but also the way it's presented. The way people see it, the way people like actually like, invited or they're invited to the story. They don't want to read a textbook. Okay. They don't, where things ramble. Okay. You can see there's actually like spaces in between the paragraphs, and that sort of thing. Because that's actually how it resembles a conversation. Remember the first part of this class, I talked about the scripts, now there were spaces. Well, that's actually how news stories are presented on the web, right? And, even though New York Times gets a little bit long-winded, it's still very simplified sentences and their active voice. President Biden is considering deploying several thousand US troops as well as warships and aircraft to NATO allies. Okay. Biden is considering. The move would signal a major pivot for the Biden administration. See, it's kind of very concise. And notice that each paragraph is usually no more than 1 or 2 sentences, because that's essentially what resembles what a conversation does. And then there's usually like a break or a pause to let people kind of contemplate or thought or even respond after each point is made. Okay. So that's essentially what a news story does, especially on digital media. So you want to go like 1 paragraph at a time, really more than 1 or 2 sentences. And you want to get into essentially like who, what, where, why, when, and how. Again, that might be something you learned already, I hope, in writing for media, but let's just reemphasize it now. You want to go through the story and really answer the questions who, what, where, why, when, and how. Okay. Keeping that theme of what is unique, what's unique about it, what's unique, basically. And then ultimately you get into like maybe like background in the story that goes lower because it's not as important. Think again of the inverted pyramid. Remember the inverted pyramid? Yeah, where the most important stuff is at the top and the least important stuff is at the bottom. Well, that's because the new stuff is the more important stuff and the older stuff is the less important stuff. So background is still important, the stuff that led up to it. I mean, I would talk about Rodgers' Super Bowl victory maybe from long ago, but I would put it at maybe at the bottom of the story. Okay. What's more important is what's happening now: retirement talk, vaccine, failure in the playoffs, that sort of thing. Okay. And you want to basically be able to emphasize that throughout the story. So, all right. So again, like your story really should be like no more than paragraphs, no more than 1 or 2 sentences. Okay. The lead really should only be like 1 sentence. Okay. And then what I also want you guys to do is also to take a photo of your subject. Okay. I could talk more about that on Thursday about what to do with that. Okay. But that is actually what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to use that as kind of a launching point for the next thing we're going to talk about. Okay. Which will be about photography. All right. One of the next things. All right. All right. So that's really it for today, guys. Does anybody have any? I'm sorry, I didn't really stop much for questions or anything like that, but use this opportunity right now. Does anybody have any questions about anything or? No. Okay. That's fine. All right. All right, guys. Thanks very much. And let me know if you have any questions. And by the way, don't forget, I'd like to have everybody's email. So if you haven't sent me your email yet, just send me an email, say hi. Okay. Because that's actually like how I like to deliver back your homework and stuff. All right. So, all right, guys, thanks very much. And I will be talking.